We're moving forward. And now you're going backwards again. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just some clarification, like we did the master plan, did we not have public input from different open houses? I believe we did. County Manager, could you answer?
Through the chair, there were a couple open houses for the master plan of 215.
Right, and people had a lot of input. Was there good turnouts for those meetings?
I'm not sure of the turnout. I believe Simcoe obviously was the bigger one, and the one in the west end of the county was smaller. And out of that input from people came the recommendation of moving forward with a feasibility study on our larger recreational facilities.
Thank you.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that we've received a lot of emails and calls, and the galley was full of people wanting the community hub, right, Mr. Chair? I know you'll remember that. Where are they today? Not a single one. The funding comes up, we're looking for $98,000. Not one person with a Visa card comes forward, or not even a hands up, Mr. Chair. Where did the support go? Is it gone because the temporary measures we put in at Talbot Garden fixed that problem? Now, or it's not a pressing urgency, is that because they're all up in my ward at Long Point Beach? Or in Dover maybe? I'm not sure, Mr. Chair, but there's nobody here. I don't see a problem with having our staff go out like what we do with our planning meetings and just try to get some input. I think some spots are going to be pretty cold. And not like the Talbot Garden Arena cold. You know, for me, planning for the future includes one thing, Mr. Chair, and that's saving money. We don't even have the $98,000, let alone $14 million, $20 million, $500,000. We don't even have a dollar saved up for this project. That's planning to me. Start saving money. We just had our reserve account. There's no money. That's tapped. We have so many other things to look after right now. Is this a priority for Councillor Height? No, it is not, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bulk of these items that we see on this addendum that was passed out today are Simcoe items. The Annalise Carpool, Talbot Gardens, and the Simcoe Adult Community Center. We know that the Pond Street facility for the Adult Community Center is not adequate. And we know that the people that use it want to be downtown, not out on the outskirts. So we know that we have to give this attention as soon as possible. As far as the pool goes, we've had a lot of complaints. We know that we have to do something to replace the pool in Simcoe and for Norfolk County as a whole. When it comes to Talbot Gardens, we should get right on it. We're not using the full facility. We should get out there and get a contractor and start putting that place together, because I cannot see demolishing it whatsoever. I think it's still a pretty good building other than the seating and probably the ice surface, which I think is scheduled anyway. So, you know, you can say it's for Norfolk County, but these projects that have been outlined on this two-page document are all Simcoe projects. So let's get on with fixing them. I don't see any need to have a committee to go around the 5 urban centers.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, would you read the motion and we're going to vote? Please.
I will try. I didn't get every word exactly as Councillor Oliver, but I think I got maybe the gist. That a subcommittee of council be formed to undertake a consultation process respecting a recreation complex, and that the subcommittee meet in the fall of 2017 in all 5 urban centers in Norfolk County to receive public input from the communities, and that the subcommittee evaluate options for the location and type of facilities desired and required in the municipality.
Thank you. Is that close enough to your motion?
It's even better than what I said, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Those in favor of the motion, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those opposed, 1, 2, 3, 4. The motion carries. That's where we got 5. Because we are 9. 5 and 4 are 9?
Perhaps appointments to the committee right now, because it's
Well, We're at 5 o'clock. When we come back.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay. The clerk just reminded me that we should speak for those people who are willing to volunteer, but I look at the clock. It is 5 o'clock. If my math is right, we have to start.
I don't see
We can
them
do
in
this at the
attendance
end.
right now, but if we maybe take a break. Oh, are they? Okay.
So why don't we have a break for 15 minutes? Is that all right? And I'll ask the clerk to call our deputation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, we have a deputation from Jessica, Neil, and Carol from the Norfolk Community Policing Committee respecting drowning prevention signs in Long Point, Turkey Point, and Port Dover. If you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium now, just a reminder that you have 10 minutes in total, and Councillor Wells is the guard of that, and he'll give you about a reminder of 1 minute or so that you're running low on time. Thank you very much.
You now have the floor.
All right. So we just want to start by thanking everyone for the opportunity to, I know I'm short, so this will be interesting. We just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to bring this initiative forward. And I'll just introduce, so we have Carol Greentree, she's the Simcoe Community Policing Chair. Neil O'Connell is the Norfolk Community Policing Chair, as well as the Port Dover Community Policing Co-Chair. And myself, Jessica Steffen, Delhi Community Policing Chair.
Little taller here. Mr. Chairman, councillors, and council members, to quote hashtag Norfolk, or Go Norfolk Summertime Fun, the natural beauty of the area makes Norfolk a perfect stop for a summer getaway. From beaches to creeks to channels to ponds, finding a beautiful spot to get wet is easy. In regards to beaches, tourists are likely to be unfamiliar with Lake Erie beaches, and to that point, likely the majority of Norfolk residents are unaware of Lake Erie's characteristics. The News Herald Lifestyle, May 25th, 2017. Swimmers in Lake Erie require caution and knowledge. It's also important to bring along a sound knowledge of how to stay safe while swimming, wading, or splashing in the lake. Perhaps the first bit of advice for Lake Erie swimmers is to know what you're getting into, the body of water, that is. Along with its natural beauty, Lake Erie comes with features that can complicate matters for swimmers. While the above is US-based, it also applies to Canada. As well as too often, we read or hear year after year of tragic articles, as noted below. August 6, 2012, body of a Toronto man who drowned while swimming in Lake Erie was recovered Monday, Main Beach, Long Point Provincial Park. July 15, 2014, Long Point. Quick action by 2 off-duty nurses and Norfolk County paramedics has given an apparent drowning victim at Long Point Provincial Park Beach a fighting chance for recovery. June 27, 2016, police confirmed near drowning at Port Dover Beach. A woman was saved from drowning at the Port Dover Beach Sunday night. August 14, 2016, drowning at Long Point Provincial Park. There have been 3 deaths off the southwestern Ontario shores of Lake Erie in the past week, including the drowning of a Hamilton man on Saturday. Same context. August 14, 2016, passerby find the body of a 19-year-old drowning victim at Long Point. This is the second drowning in Lake Erie in as many days. August 14th, another report, 2016 again. Weekend tragedy marks Lake Erie's 5th drowning of the year. Wednesday, July 5th, 2017, off the waters of Lake Erie, Long Point claimed a drowning victim this week. Norfolk OPP reported a 32-year-old Norfolk woman went into distress in the lake near Long Point Provincial Park. Statistics compiled by the National Weather Service, which is U.S., and the Michigan Sea Grant show Lake Michigan worse for current-related deaths each year. Lake Erie is next. The Canadian Drowning Report 2016 states that in 2014-2015, Ontario had the highest drowning rate over all other provinces, with 86 in 2014 and 92 in 2015. The second highest was British Columbia, 62 in 2014, 67 in 2015. More specifically, the Ontario Drowning Report 2016 edition states that the most three most common areas in Ontario for drowning deaths in 2013 remain the same as 2012. Toronto, 12%, Kenora, 9%, and Simcoe, 6%, making our area the third highest area for drownings. I'd like to ask Carol to comment on other drowning prevention initiatives that the community policing committees have undertaken in the past.
Thank you, Neil. Chair, saving lives on our highways, trails, and waterways in Norfolk County is one of the goals of community policing. Saving lives on waterways is the reason why we are here today. Norfolk's community policing committees have been working towards safer waterways in many ways. In 2013, we developed a relationship with Norfolk Aquatics to bring the Community Water Safety Day. In 2013, 2014, and 2015, we had successful Community Water Safety Days, where we brought together our emergency services and other safety agencies to provide a fun day to learn about water safety. In 2016 and in 2017, we sponsored swims at our local pools during the times of the Life Saving Week and the Drowning Prevention Weeks. Today, we come to you with our newest initiative. Jess is going to talk to you about that today.
So the Norfolk Community Policing Committee would like to implement a drowning prevention initiative in Norfolk County. We have allocated funds in our 2017 business plan to commence implementation of such a program. As the program unfolds, drowning prevention signage will be placed in Norfolk County, on the Norfolk County property roadways entering Long Point, Port Dover, and Turkey Point. We're looking to portray the safety message to people coming into the beach areas, reminding them of risks of currents, undertows, and of course drownings. We're hoping to place these signs on the Norfolk County property. This initiative would take about 2 years for conclusion, depending on the costs and funds available. In regards to funds available, the Norfolk Community Policing Committee had its 2017 budget included an amount of $1,000 for this project. The balance of the necessary funds will be requested in this upcoming budget for 2018 that is required in September to the Police Services Board. Initial expenditures are projected to be around $2,825 for the 4 signs, HST and installation costs included. Ideally, we're proposing to have 1 sign per entrance, 1 in Long Point, 1 in Turkey Point, and 1 to 2 in Port Dover. And are requesting the assistance of Norfolk County in the installation process to ensure county compliance. Artwork for discussion purposes has been prepared, and a letter's been submitted to the Police Services Board requesting support. The board has offered a letter of support, which has been attached to our request for deputation. So we'd like to thank you very much for your time this evening, and
There will be questions.
Sure.
If you don't mind to take questions. Councillor Black.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I think it's a great initiative to warn people because it is true. If anybody has been to Long Point and swimming, it's more in Long Point than anywhere else. There is a very strong undertow there. And I felt it by myself. It pulls you. It really does. So to warn people is a good idea. My question, Mr. Chairman, is, and I know maybe it's based on money and that sort of thing, but would it not be more appropriate to have those signs like right on the beach rather than at the entrance to be as effective as possible? And maybe your answer is going to have something to do with money, I guess.
not so much money. I know we would love that. We've had these discussions again and again, and I guess we came to council initially because we thought it would be most viable to have it done on Norfolk County property, whereas the beach gets into provincial conservation. If we can go to that extreme, we would love to. This is our initial attempt.
Can I help answer that
Yeah.
too? When we originally started, we've done signage before throughout Norfolk, so we based it on that signage, which at the time the U.S. currency rates were extremely high for Canadian dollar purchases, and we have to buy the supplies locally. We basically purchase them locally, but they have to buy their supplies through the ES, so it's passed on to us. So we used the higher price. I also built in cost of inflation of at least 10%. Okay, so we know we have sufficient funds. Signs that you're talking about, as an example, we've done them in the past that are 12 by 18, and we've done them for Lock It or Lose It. I think you'll notice them through at Norfolk, and they run about $40 a piece. So I think we have sufficient funds where we can do both. Okay, provided on the final.
And just another question, maybe have you approached M&R, like for the provincial beaches at Long Point, to maybe see if they would actually supply their own signs rather than having you guys pay for it? And Port Dover is actually leased by Norfolk County, so there's a Norfolk County responsibility there.
Yeah, that was an original approach, is to go to Long Point and the provincial government. With the provincial government, as an example, we had worked on a community safety zone. It took us 5 years to get provincial approval. And in those 5 years, imagine it, caution, undertow, rip current, whatever you want to call it, exists. If we didn't have those signs up and we weren't proactive, we may have missed the opportunity to save a life. So maybe it's easier for us to bear the cost and get those signs up when we can. And we can always go back to Long Point and ask them to post additional signage, because I don't think we will get signage actually on the beach at Long Point because it's provincial. So once they see our signage, maybe they will take the initiative and build on it.
It's good rationale. Thanks a lot for coming forward.
Any further questions? Councillor Columbus.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're talking 4 signs here for $28.25 for the 4 signs. That's $706 per sign. It seems rather expensive to have that cost per sign. And I understand you want some help probably from the county to erect these signs, no? Or would that be contracted out, or would you expect the county to put the post up and attach the sign?
When we originally put signs up in Port Dover about 4 years ago, we had an average sign was costing us $600 per sign. They're 4 by 8 signs.
4 by 8.
Okay, the county has regulations that they have to be bolted in a certain pattern. It looks like to me like the bolts are about every 6 inches, and we have them on like an aluminum backer board, which is 3/4 inch. So you can see the actual artwork is included in there, but the completion of the actual sign is a minor part of the cost. It's the aluminum backer board. The installation, we can obviously accommodate that, but Norfolk has been good to us in the past, and they've erected signs where we've put them up before, and that's why we're asking Norfolk to help assist us to make sure that we're in compliance with signage in the proper areas.
Okay, I did not realize that they were 4 feet by 8 feet, so.
I'm sorry?
I did not realize they were 4 feet by 8 feet
They are
each.
4 by 8
Okay, that's-
because they'll be highway signs.
Right.
If you were to put them on the beach, they'll probably be 12 by 18 at
Okay.
significantly reduced cost. Same design.
And how do you, in 2015 and 2016, I rented a cottage in Port Stanley for a week at a time. And even though they have lifeguards there, they had red flags up, but the people still went out into the water where the undertow was. You know, are they going to pay attention to these signs? I guess that's the issue.
Well, I was just talking to a gentleman from Port Dover earlier, and if we're to say, how do you measure that effectiveness? We can't. So the only way we can actually be effective is to be proactive and have these signs up. I think with a lot of policing, community policing, the end result is not that visible. It's the invisible behind it. So if we save at least one life, $2,800 is a small amount, and that one life affects a family of X number of people.
Councillor Height, did I miss you? Yeah, you're on now. I don't want to miss you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, as the Councillor for Long Point, I really appreciate the deputation coming forward. I've always wondered for all my life why there were no signs ever to warn people. I learned to swim off a Long Point, and I'm sure our county manager did as well. And all the locals know, watch out for the undertow. And if you bring somebody new to the beach, you tell them that before you go out. And it saves lives. And I find it very weird that the provincial parks don't actually have a sign like that, where most of the drownings happen off of those areas. And I'm wondering, through you, Mr. Chair, to the deputation, have you had to sit down with the manager of the parks and ask them to, this initiative where you're actually trying to save lives, what they could do about it?
I think, no, we have not. Because we are a partner with Norfolk County as part of the community policing, we felt this would be the best route to go first. And then every year we come up with initiatives for the community policing. So this might be something we can grow on in the future, but I think we need to start at some level and move from there.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, I'm sure you're aware there's the Long Point Ratepayers Association. I believe there's the Turkey Point Cottage Association as well. Have you approached those two groups and asked for any funding for your signs?
We have talked to the individuals, and I think it was the Turkey Point ratepayers that were funded under community policing at one time. Long Point ratepayers, we have approached them for Cottage Watch to help them with Cottage Watch. We have not heard back from them. And as our approach, we were going to put them along with Port Dover so that they could come to our meetings and we could help shepherd them along the way towards signage, and we would support signage along with their financial contribution. And the support for that would basically be a dollar-for-dollar contribution, because community policing cannot make grants. So we would ask them, as an example, for $500. They raise $500. We could support $500 as a co-project. Okay, so we would be a sponsor, not granting funds.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm sure they're watching tonight, and hopefully they'll get in contact you with that, because I feel the community is in need of those signs for sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Sonnenberg, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great concept. However, road signs are kind of limited. If you're passing by in a vehicle, you only have so much time to read what's on a 4x8 sign. What would you put on that sign to be able, so the person can read it and absorb it and still have enough information for the sign to be effective?
I've got a copy for you. Actually, we went with a minimum amount of wordage, okay? We know that it's difficult. We've done 4x8 signs, and we've had people say, there's too much wordage on it. So we went with a very simple concept. At the top, you'll see Norfolk County, and it's called Norfolk County Beaches Welcome You, as an example. I'm trying to read backwards, so. Undertow may occur at any time. Exercise caution, safe swim practices. That is basic marking, discussion purposes only. So the only other would be our logo, Norfolk County Community Policing, and an undertow sign, which is universal. Okay, so that would be the minimum amount of wordage. We may have to put in undertow and rip currents. Rip currents are basically stronger than undertow, but they're exactly the same thing. So.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, we thank you very much for your deputation. You may be seated, please. Council, do we have a motion to receive the deputation? Councillor Oliver has moved. Councillor Columbus has seconded. All in favor of receiving the deputation. So, Councillor Black.
I put a motion on the floor to accept the Norfolk County Community Policing proposal for signage. Norfolk County supports it.
Mayor Luke, you are seconding that motion. You've heard the motion. Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recently, I found out that Norfolk County has its own sign shop. Could we not help them out some way in our current operating budget to make some signs? Like, we're looking at a small group here. It's really a small amount of money when you consider the lives that it could save, and we could build these signs and get them out right away as opposed to a 2-year initiative. We're talking 3 signs here. I'm sure there's some recycled signs from Long Point that maybe they could tack together and make monstrous billboards from, Mr. Chair.
Sir?
Through the chair to Councillor Height, it's something that I can definitely look into. If we get kind of the specifications of what exactly they want the signs to look like, we could get some pricing through the sign shop at the Norfolk County Garage and bring that information back.
Okay. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And yes, please. Okay, that brings us back to, if you don't mind, before we go on with our agenda, back to the motion that Councillor Oliver put on before we broke. And that was, he suggested that we form a committee of 3 councillors to look into, do you have the motion?
The subcommittee to travel to, this fall, to the 5 urban centers to receive public input from the communities there respecting a recreational complex. And just to facilitate the timeline, it's kind of important to make the 3 appointments at this time, or else it would be difficult to get it done.
Okay, those of you who would be willing to serve on that committee. I see Councillor Oliver, I see Councillor Geisens, I see Councillor Black. Anyone else? All in favor of appointing those 3 to serve on this committee? You are appointed. Good luck. Councillor Oliver.
Mr. Chair, I think it would be understood that any councillor would be invited and welcome and asked to attend the meetings in their community. So I presume the clerk's office will circulate that to us all once we get a schedule, and it would be hopeful that we'd have good councillor involvement. Thanks.
All right. That being done, let us go back to our agenda, please. And Mr. Clerk, where are we on the agenda? If I could see, I'd be happy.
Sorry, we are on staff report DCS 1761, draft source water protection, water quantity policy approaches.
And that would be Ms. Elder. Would you please report to us?
Thank you to the chair. The source water protection reports that you've seen before have been about water quality, and I will be coming back in September with some more on water quality. But tonight, our focus is on water quantity. There were studies done in 2014 and 15 on what they call Tier 3, which is looking at the water quantity and taking of water, and can we sustain taking the amount of water we do from our municipal wells. As a result of that, it was identified that the Chapel Street and Chapel and Cedar Street wells may, in the future, run into some difficulties with water quantity. So through the source water protection staff at the Grand River Conservation Authority, starting in April, planning staff and staff of Public Works, particularly Bob Fields, started looking at what kind of policies might we need to put in place. The ministry wants to have a revised source protection plan by the end of December. So in June, we held an open house to talk to the public about possible policies that we could put in the plans to deal with water quantity. And there was only 4 people that attended that open house, which was unfortunate, but we have proceeded from then to further refine the draft policies, and tonight's report is bringing those forward to you. Attachments 3 and 4 to the report have them in detail, but I'd just like to summarize them quickly if I could. What the policies are asking is that the ministry fund the municipal capacity to support water management decisions and update our water supply master plan. Asking the ministry to fund the Tier 3 model, water budget model, so that it can continue to be used. It's an expensive thing, and municipalities need to be able to use that. The policies ask that the ministry add conditions to permits to ensure that we're not taking too much water, that they reassess Norfolk County's high water use designation based on the study, the work that has been done, and that water-taking permits be prioritized when they could impact on the municipal water supply. Norfolk County is being, in these policies, asked to extend its education and outreach, to update its water supply master plan, to update its water conservation plan. It's encouraged to consider locating additional water supplies where practical, and to only provide land use planning approvals where a new permit to take water is needed when the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change determines the proposed taking will not provide a significant threat, or the expansion does not exceed the water allocation threshold established in the updated water supply master plan. Norfolk County is also encouraged to maintain pre-development recharge where appropriate. At this point, there have been no issues to date in meeting the water quantity needs for Simcoe. And these policies, I think, will go a long way to ensuring that we don't have a threat to our water quantities for Simcoe. But yes, this could have quite an effect in the future on residential development, large commercial development in Simcoe urban area, because you need to ensure that there is enough quantity of water before those approvals are given. In conclusion then, the Environmental Services Division and Community Planning staff recommend that Council adopt these draft policies in order to assist with the future ability to source sustainable quantity of water from the Simcoe, Chapel, and Cedar Street municipal wells for as long as needed, and that this report and Council's resolution tonight be sent to the Source Protection Committee for their September 7th meeting. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Black.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Ms. Elder, and are we not, I thought that we were sourcing new supplies of water to the north of Simcoe and the sort of in the Bloomsburg area. Isn't that underway, and would that not provide an adequate supply into the future?
Got you.
Anybody answer that question? I thought we were doing this.
Through the chair to council, that is correct, though those studies are still underway. In addition to that, I can also confirm that staff are still investigating the interconnection of the various communities, so interconnecting those water supplies so that we have longer future stability of supply in all our communities. Unfortunately, I've become fairly removed from that process, but any further update would need to come from our engineering division or environmental services, which I can have Lee provide to you.
Mr. Chairman, it's I'm a bit fearful from this report because I thought that we were already investigating these wells, and the interconnectivity would be very easy if we found a source in Bloomsburg or in that area. I mean, it's kind of halfway between Waterford and Simcoe. So I wouldn't mind knowing a little bit more, an update on where we're at with some of that sourcing, and maybe while they're at it, they can tell us where they're at with the Port Rowan, because maybe we did have a report on that, because I know they were investigating all over the place in Port Rowan for water. So maybe there should be an update on that. I don't know if we decided to go back to the lake or not.
Do you have any further updates for Mr. Councillor Black at this time, Ms. Elder?
No, that question really lies with Bob Fields and Environmental Services, so to Jason.
Jason, do you have anything else?
Unfortunately, not at this time, but we can definitely get an update put together and present it back to council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, is that all right, Councillor Black? Councillor Brunton, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question relates somewhat to what Councillor Black mentioned, the I recall we got a memo from Mr. Fields a while back, and he talked about the interconnection of stuff, and I kind of wondered, and I know I mean, we bought some of the property that are now trails going to Dover and that. One of those long-range plans were to bring water from Dover into Simcoe. Then that changed and they were going to go down towards Port Rarcy. I heard all these kind of stories, but do these, somebody could answer my question perhaps, these two areas, the area that's shown on map on page, well, what page is it here? 18. These source protection documents, do they only apply to that specific area there, Mary, or am I reading that right?
Through the chair, it is the area within the dashed black line.
Right. So I call it the northwest well fields, that's the ones out towards Cayuga and that. I understand there's a problem with that water, not in terms of iron or manganese or something like that. I'm not sure what it was, but there's quantity is no problem. Correct?
Through the chair, I can't answer questions on the existing wells and what their status is. It has to go to Jason or be deferred and come back later.
Okay. Well, I guess long-term, I'm certainly interested in what Mr. Fields wrote a little while back in his report about interconnecting of different water sources like Dover. I know we've connected Delhi and Cortland and those kind of things, so I would hope we get some more information on that. Thank you.
I think Mr. Gumby has made a note. And Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First on Councillor Brunton's question, it is only these two wells, the Cedar Street well and the Chapel Street well, that were identified as being potentially at risk for inadequate supply. In other words, they could get pumped down to dangerous levels under the worst case scenarios that the source protection plan looked at. So none of our other water supplies, including the other wells that serve Simcoe, have any kind of an issue around quantity. And that's all these policies are relating to. Mr. Chairman, I did have a question though to Mary, and again, it's from the map on page 18. And Mary, I was glad to hear your answer. I had understood earlier that the potential WIPA-Q, as we call them, the wellhead protection area for quantity for these wells, was almost going to follow the WIPA-3 or the WIPA-C for those wells that traveled up considerably further to the north and west. But not restrictions, but the policies we're talking about in this document and this report this evening would only apply within the dotted area on the map on page number 18. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, that's good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mary, there's a statement under the introduction background of this report. At the last paragraph, last sentence in the paragraph says, private water takings and recharge reduction had little impact on Simcoe's municipal drinking water supply. Can you expand on that statement as to exactly what you mean by it?
Through the chair, to the best of my knowledge, what it's talking about is if someone was taking for irrigation or a private well, they put those through the model and they didn't find that those were having a significant impact. They had very little impact. It's more as you expand the urban demands, that's what's going to have the impact.
Okay, I see no further speakers. Councillor Black.
Chairman, I'd like to move the recommendation contained within the report.
We have the recommendation moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Columbus. All in favor? Carried. That brings us to our next item, which is Legacy Fund Policy, page 31 and 31 to 40. Who's doing that, little baby doll? Mr. James, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to members of council, This report is a result of the legacy fund policy being disbanded on the July 11th, 2017 council meeting. The new legacy fund policy is essentially the same as the previous policy, but without the advisory committee component. This is more or less a housekeeping report to ensure the administration of the legacy fund continues, and if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Mayor Luke, please.
Well, as, excuse me, Mr. Chair, as our GM has just told us, nothing's changed. We still are going to invest the money that we have since the beginning of getting this money, except for the advisory committee. I will move the recommendation.
Recommendation has been moved. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Brunton. We are now open for discussion. First hand I saw was Councillor Height, followed by Councillor Columbus, or Councillor Oliver, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the only concern I have with moving this right now is our discussions earlier in the closed session. This could tie up something that we may need to do in the future, and I'm not quite sure how to address that, whether we have to bring it back or just actually defer this. Maybe the treasurer could speak to how that would work.
Could you help Councillor Height, please, and the rest of council, of course?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, without getting into a lot of information, if I can read to you one of the motions that was made on July 11th, sorry. And further, that council reaffirm its position of 2015 being that the initial principal amount of the legacy fund of $67,708,000 remain intact, and that only the interest accrued through the investments of this amount be utilized. So I think that's a key portion of this motion, and that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to install the revised policy without the advisory committee. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so through the chair to the treasurer, would you have a problem if we deferred this for a couple months to iron out some kinks that might be coming up?
Go ahead, please.
Through the chair, I feel we should pass this today, if council agrees. And then if there's anything within the investment that we would like to change, for example, right now we use the one fund investment for all of the principal. There's no reason why we can't explore other avenues of investments as long as council approves adjusting the existing policy to include other avenues or other instruments of investing.
Got it. Roger that.
Okay, I think that brings us to you, Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And again, I apologize for the fact that I wasn't here on the evening of the 11th when council decided to do away with the advisory committee, and I certainly respect council's wishes, and I'm going to support this motion. I did feel that the advisory committee performed a useful function in that a small group of us had first kick at the can, so to speak, and made recommendations, and they ultimately had to come to council in any event. But I also see the merits, and I think Councillor Height was the one that put this forward, having all of us around the table and hear the discussion, pros and cons about those decisions on an annual basis. So this is probably a good motion. Thank you.
No further speakers? We have it moved and seconded, do we not? All in favor? Motion is carried. That brings us to our next item with regard to the 10-year housing and homeless plan. I presume that would be somebody over on this side.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to ask Ms. Van Dyke Ellis to present the next few reports, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to members of council, this first report is a report that council sees on an annual basis. It's the annual update for our 10-year housing and homelessness plan. Council will remember that this is a mandated activity that we have to undertake every year in accordance with the Housing Services Act, which is the legislation that governs all of our rent geared to income housing, affordable housing,